I suppose as somebody who's a socialist, this sort of confirms my own intuitive prejudices maybe about how social class and poverty impact on outcomes for people. But I think it's good to have scientific evidence of that, and as has been said, some of it is quite startling in how profound the impacts of these things are and how early those impacts have consequences that are lifelong. So that is pretty startling stuff, and I think really is an unanswerable case for the need for early intervention and a sort of preventative approach when it comes to trying to deal with the problems that the kids and adults subsequently have that result from deprivation or poverty or lack of supports or inadequate preschool education or all the different array of things that young people and their mothers, even at an earlier stage, need. Lack of housing or insecurity when it comes to housing must have an absolutely devastating effect, even before the children are born, because there is nothing, in my opinion, nothing that impacts more in terms of stress than not knowing you've got a roof over your head or having any insecurity whatsoever around the issue of will you have somewhere to live in a few weeks or a few months or a few years. And when you consider the scale of the housing crisis at the moment, the long-term damage, never mind the sort of short-term anxiety and fear and terror and panic that is inducing, the long-term damage that is doing if the most basic thing of not having a roof over your head is not even guaranteed, how can you even do anything else? And what is that doing to the kids? I mean, it just strikes me anecdotally from what I come across, it's having a massive impact. But what your study tells us is it's going to have a very long-term damaging impact for those kids. So I just think we should really highlight that fact. I mean, just to conclude, obviously what it tells us is that the cumulative impact of cuts that have particularly hit kids and women are really, really so regressive and damaging. And I think it is worth pointing out that other countries that have undergone austerity have not had the same proportionate effect on, according to the UN, even though they've had austerity imposed, they have insulated kids and some of the more vulnerable groups from that austerity, which we have failed to do when you look at all the statistics in terms of the rise of deprivation, the rise of homelessness, the rise of consistent poverty and so on over the last few years. So it's a pretty damning indictment of how damaging some of the policies of the last few years have been, and the need to urgently reverse them. And just a last, I suppose, question to the Alliance, and I was discussing it when I was kind of getting briefed before this last week, is I think it might be useful and helpful for us as well to move beyond the principles, which are excellent and really, you can't question, and which I think probably all of us will endorse, is to then say, how can we make these more concrete and specific in terms of pre-election demands, pledges, and so on, putting numbers on it. And I know in some ways it kind of cuts against the grain to put numbers on these things, but otherwise you can get vague commitments which don't translate. And I think we all need to think a little bit about how we put numbers and specific demands in specific sectors about what exactly we want in order to translate these principles into reality. I mean, one thing that strikes me maybe is that the 0.2% less of that we only spend 0.2% of GDP in this area compared to 0.8, that should be the demand. That we insist, or that we pledge to increase the expenditure in these areas up to at least the OECD average.